Hello, my name is Emily Natalia Guzman Cobova. I'm a student at the University of TecMilenio Las Torres, and I'm currently cursing my fifth semester in high school. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the Cold War, but first of all, I'm going to mention a few important events that occurred in this event. The first one is the Berlin Airlift. This happened in June of 1948, when the US and Britain announced a proposal for establishing a new currency, the Deutschmark, into West Berlin. There is also the Cuban Missile Crisis. On October 14 of 1962, a U-2 spy plane flying over Cuba discovered nuclear missile sites under construction. These missiles would have been capable of quickly reaching the United States. And finally, I'm going to mention the Soviet-Afghan War. The Soviet War in Afghanistan lasted 9 years, from December of 1979 to February of 1989. It was fought between Soviet-led Afghan forces against multinational rebel groups called the Mujahideens. Now, what is the Cold War? The Cold War was a period of geopolitical tension between the Soviet Union and the United States, and their respective allies, the Eastern Bloc and the Western Bloc. This all happened after World War II. The start date is in 1947, and the end date was in 1991. The term Cold War refers to a state of conflict between nations that does not involve direct military action, but is pursued primarily through economic and political actions, propaganda, acts of espionage, or proxy wars waged by surrogates. In the Cold War, there are two main economic systems: the capitalist system and the socialist system. Capitalism is an economic system based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. Central characteristics of capitalism include capital accumulation, competitive markets, a price system, private property and the recognition of property rights, voluntary exchange, and wage labor. It was Adam Smith who noticed that mercantilism was not a force of development and change, but a regressive system that was creating trade imbalances between nations and keeping them from advancing. He was an economist and philosopher who wrote what is considered the Bible of capitalism, The Wealth of Nations, in which he details the first system of political economy. Now, socialism is a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned by or regulated by the community as a whole. Socialism was coined by Henry de Saint-Simon, one of the founders of what would be later labeled utopian socialism. But it was mainly influenced by the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in 1848. Interviews. Right now, I'm going to interview Barbara Kopova at the age of 42, and she is my mom. What countries were the world leaders during this period?
During this period, the main countries involved were the United States of America and the country which is now known as Russia.
Why did countries who were allies during the wars become enemies afterwards?
They became rivals because of the beliefs that each of them had. The socialists believed in controlling the industry while the capitalists didn't.
Where did the Cold War take place?
It took place almost everywhere in the world, but mainly in Europe, the Soviet Union, and the United States of America, but also affected countries like Cuba and Korea.
What opinion did the general public have of the Cold War?
I'm not an expert on the topic, but I guess that they didn't really know about the whole situation because this war wasn't military, it was more political.
What type of weapons did the two world powers have at their disposal?
They had weapons of mass destruction, principally missiles and nuclear bombs.
Okay, that will be all. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
And finally, I'm going to talk about my opinion on this topic and the two economic systems, which are the capitalist and the socialist. So, As I already mentioned, the Cold War wasn't military, which means that there weren't as many casualties as in the World War II. Although there were many small events that occurred during this war, it wasn't as catastrophic. I think that what really caused this problem was the disrespect between the two leader countries. If they only had respected each other's decisions and economic systems, I think that this wouldn't happen at all. My opinion about the economic systems is that I am really glad to live in a capitalist country. Because if you work hard enough, you can get what you really deserve. Instead, in a socialist country, everyone gets the same amount of everything, which actually sounds great, but it isn't fair to those who are hardworking people. Okay, so that'll be all from my part. Thank you so much for your attention.